Hi there, Brobee223 here, and thanks for checking out my YouTube channel. You've tuned into the third episode of my Series 3 shock and ammunition tests, where we're examining the super short-range penetration characteristics of various rifled 12-gauge slugs. This time, we're looking at the original Brenneke slug, and if you're wondering why we're testing it at such close range, check out some of my previous slug reviews and you'll find out. Brenneke's been making rifled slugs for more than 100 years now, and they market their current offerings as being just about perfect and suitable for almost every type of big or dangerous game you could ever imagine. To me, that means deep penetration with little to no deflection and minimal expansion. So to test this, I've set up a 2-block array of carefully prepared and calibrated 10% ballistics gel with a total linear depth of 36 inches. Here's my 22-inch barreled Remington Versamax, and I just loaded it with one of the 2 3/4-inch Royal Brenneke slugs. The gun is set up with an improved cylinder pro-bore choke, and I'll use it to shoot the gelatin from a range of 7 yards. Here we go. Now in a previous episode, you might remember that we tested Winchester's Super X hollow point rifled slug. If you go back and watch that episode again, you'll see that it measured up considerably short, with excessive expansion, lots of deflection, and super poor penetration. Then, in my second slug episode, we looked at Federal's True Ball Deep Penetrator, and you might remember that that slug performed significantly better, and I gave it a pretty enthusiastic 2 thumbs up. So how's the Brenneke gonna stack up? Looks pretty good to me. That's a nice straight permanent crush cavity through the gelatin, and I measured approximately 29 inches of total penetration. I was a bit surprised that it's about 3.5 inches less than what we saw with the Federal True Ball Deep Penetrator, but it's certainly more than the 14.5 inches we witnessed with the Winchester Super X rifled slug. The temporary stretch cavity pretty much transects 90% of the first gelatin block, and there are no fragments in any secondary channels that I can see. So let me put the camera down, carve out that fire slug, and then we'll head back to my shop for a closer look. Here's a quick look at an unfired slug. It features a rounded ball-like point that transitions to a flat met plate around the circumference of the slug's nose and a series of rifled ridges that allow the slug to swage through whatever choke you've used to set up your gun. A felt wad is actually screwed to the bottom of the slug, and if it stays intact and attached upon firing, I think it would strongly support the aerodynamics of the slug's nose-heavy design. And to help identify it from all those Brenneke imitations, the original Brenneke is marked around the circumference of the slug's met plate. Now here's the slug I pulled from the gelatin block, and wow, it now totally makes sense to me that there was less penetration by comparison to the Federal True Ball Penetrator, for as you can see, the Brenneke definitely underwent some expansion. My calibers measure the recovered slug's diameter at approximately 850 thou, which gives it about 30% additional cross-sectional area if you compare it to the 750 thou diameter of the recovered Federal slug. And of particular interest to me are all those little ridges that stay intact to form a dozen somewhat sharp petals around the nose of the slug. I imagine that the unique geometry of these petals and the corresponding greater surface area of the wound channel they'd cut effect better bleeding within the permanent crush cavity. So despite my initial reservations about the lesser penetration exhibited by this slug when compared to the performance of the Federal slug, I think that the very controlled expansion and the unique geometry of the resulting crush cavity make for a good trade-off against the small amount of penetration lost. And you'll also notice that the felt wad remained attached to the base of the slug, even as it traveled through the gelatin. If you go back and look at the position of the slug within the gelatin, you'll see that it remained nose first as it traveled through the target media. I believe largely due to the attached fiber wad. I think this helps to minimize deflection and consequently makes for an all-around smart design. And that pretty much wraps up this episode where we conducted a short-range gelatin test of the famous Brenneke 12-gauge rifled slug. If compared to the Federal slug I reviewed in my previous episode, the Brenneke gives up a small amount of penetration in exchange for some moderate, controlled expansion. I think this slug strikes a great balance between the two, and consequently have no hesitation in recommending it for use against any dangerous animal. So if you like this episode and would like to see more, please subscribe. This helps me finance future episodes, and I can't wait to start working on the next one. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, please take care. Bye for now.